All right. Welcome. So we are in our Thursday evening session with our 2025 YTT class. I'm going to start by going through the 8 limbs of yoga, doing a screen share. Some of this may already be a little bit repetitive based on what you were taught by Zach, and even maybe Whitney and Malka, but I do want to make sure that we know that these 8 limbs are kind of the overarching um, how do I say it? The overarching thread, or like the thread that holds this entire training together, right? Has anyone talked, or does anyone know about the 8 limbs of yoga very much yet? No? Okay, good. This is going to be juicy and good. Let me make sure I can see everybody over on the side. Oops, that's not it. There it is. All right, so we're going to start so we're going to start at the bottom with the circle. And so Patanjali, who Zach talked a little bit about to you, was the one or ones, it could have been a collective of people, known as the sage Patanjali, who came up with the Yoga Sutras. And these 8 limbs were part of that. And so the idea is that this yoga practice has these 8 limbs, and the one that we all come into it, at least at this studio, usually, I call it the gateway limb, is the third limb, which is asana. So if you look over to that yellow ball that's a little hard to see because the writing is white, we see asana, which is posture and movement. Now, that little yellow ball, that's the only physical body, really, body part of the yoga limbs, right? All the rest of them are energetic and meditation. So if you think about it, we spend so much time on this physical practice of yoga and all the asana and all the poses and everything. And that's just one tiny little bit of this 8 limbs of yoga circle, right? So let's jump back up to the first one, which is called yama. There are actually 5 yamas. You can call it yama or yamas. And those are translated from Sanskrit as restraints. And they are ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. Now, you should have this page in color in your binder at the beginning, so you can just make notes on it or whatever, look at it. Um, and I'll go through them one at a time. So, ahimsa is the overarching one that controls or comes over all of the other ones, and that's the nonviolence, right? So, the compassion toward yourself and others. Then the second, only slightly less important one is known as satya, which is truth. So, being honest with your thoughts, feelings, and deeds. And I will say that this is an interesting example of the A turning the meaning of the Sanskrit word backwards or opposite. So, in other words, himsa in Sanskrit means violence, steya means stealing, parigraha means greed or coveting. So, if you add the A, it actually turns it to the opposite meaning. Can anyone think of an example in English where we have that rule? You can just put it in the chat. We do have some English words that have, because some of our English words actually do come from Sanskrit. Not a ton, not as many as like Latin or something like that, but really quite a few of them. Yeah, where's my chat? I have to stop my share for a minute. Okay, cool. Yeah, so perfect. Atypical. Abnormal, I'm not sure. I think that's more of the ab because it would be anormal, right? If it was that rule, but good guess. Um, And then I see amoral, right? Ahistorical, great. Ahistorical. Is that a word? Must be, right? I trust Sarah. How about asymmetrical? What are some other ones? Okay, we'll leave the chat open for that. But let's go back to the do, do, do. All right, so bringing us right along to the third yama is asteya, which is the non-stealing, being content with what comes to you. And that is not just stealing of actual items like robbing from a store, but it's also, more importantly, often in yoga, the stealing of ideas. So we do ask you when you are saying a quote to say who said that quote, or even, my teacher taught me this particular asana. It really helps me with this. And just kind of always honoring the lineage that came before you, and doing that non-stealing, that asteya. And then brahmacharya is an interesting one because it can be translated as continence, but like Zach taught us, it has all these Sanskrit words have a ton of different meanings, right? So it's specifically also like sexual continence. So not like spreading out your sexual energy all over the place and leaving no energy for yourself. So it could mean that, and it could also just mean not spreading out all of your energetic fire, in the world to everybody and not keeping some for yourself. So if you were not exhibiting good brahmacharya, it might be sexual, but it might also just be like the person that says yes to everything that never respects any boundaries and, people really take advantage of them. So if you can see, these are all kind of like having to do with the outside world. So ahimsa, nonviolence to the outside world, truth, not lying, asteya, not stealing, brahmacharya, not giving out your energy. And then the last one is aparigraha, so non-coveting or non-greed. So basically being a little bit more content with what you have, which we'll see in one of the niyamas as well. Okay. So think of the yamas as like you, the yogi, versus the outside world or interacting with the outside world. Then the second limb of yoga are niyama or niyamas are the practices, and those are the ones that we internalize. Those have to do with ourselves. So saucha is your purity, both of your mind and spirit, also just of your physical body. We relate it back to the yoga studio. Try to make sure you're not like that smelly person in the class, right? Make sure you're keeping yourself clean. Santosha goes along with aparigraha because that's that contentment, that self-acceptance of your own mind, body, and spirit, basically. Tapas is an important one in physical practice. So it's that self-discipline, the heat and the perseverance. And a lot of times that lives in the third chakra, which we're going to learn about next week, in the belly, right? So the heat in the belly, the fire, that belly fire, that gut fire, and that perseverance, that's the tapas. You don't want to have everything just be, you just don't want to give up on everything when it becomes too difficult. Next, we have svadhyaya, which is our spiritual study, our self-observation. As yogis, we constantly want to be looking back at ourselves and observing ourselves and not necessarily making changes like, oh, I need to do this because I'm not good enough, but just looking at ourselves as maybe others might look at us or observing ourselves from an objective point of view. That's the svadhyaya. I see that a lot with teachers at the studio who might be like, oh, I used to teach and it was all about me and my ego, and now I teach more and it's more focused or centered on the students, things like that. You're constantly just looking back at the way that you're interacting with the world. And then the last one is pronounced Ishvara Pranidhana, and that's the celebration of spiritual enlightenment. So basically giving it all up for your higher power and just like celebrating and saying, look, I know it's not just humans. I know it's not just us. There is a higher power out there, and we're just going to surrender to it, to this energy, earth, God, whatever you choose to name it as. Questions or comments on the yamas or the niyamas? And those are the first two, and also the ones we'll kind of talk about the most or spend the most time on. You can just unmute or put it in the chat. Good. Okay. So asana, we talked about physical practice. Also, interestingly, a lot of things in yoga go from the gross, the word gross, gross, not like gross, ew, that's gross, but like the gross meaning the physical, like the tangible thing that you can touch, you can put your fingers on, like the body, the mat, the ground, the earth, all of those physical things. It starts with those and then it makes its way up to the divine. So the yamas and the niyamas, those are considered gross. They have to do with the physical body. They have to do with the physical cleanliness. They have to do with like stealing of items and things like that, physical things. And then as we move, we get more and more into the spiritual realm. So asana is the next one. That's our posture. That's our movement. Next is our pranayama, which is our breath control. Another super important limb that we incorporate in each class. This is also having to do with the body, but it's starting to get a little bit more into the upper spirit realm because you're talking about something like breath. That is the life force energy. It's the prana. And then the word yama we see at the end of prana, and that goes along with this yama, which is restraint or control. So pranayama can be translated as breath restraint or breath control. You're purposely moving your breath through your body for certain to achieve certain goals. And then pratyahara is withdrawal of the senses. So again, we're moving towards the divine. This would be floating in a float tank in order to just completely turn off the senses. Or, in the back in the day, like the yogis engaging in just such deep meditation that they go into that pratyahara, that withdrawal of the senses. Um, Sometimes in yoga, we'll in class we'll turn off the lights, or we'll just turn off the music, or just turn off all of the information that is being given to our senses so that the body can start to listen to itself. And it doesn't have to mean that you have to be like completely in darkness, completely no sound, but just lessening all of the stimuli that are constantly coming in, right? Recognizes that there's too much stimuli a lot of the time coming in. That's your pratyahara. And then that allows you to move towards dharana. So that word dharana, the emphasis is on the first syllable, dharana. And it's having an intense focus and a steady mind achieved by, turning down the sensory overstimulation. And then dharana, which is focus or concentration, can lead to dhyana, which is meditation. So we're moving more and more towards the spiritual realm with our contemplation, with our meditation, perhaps with our stillness. We've done our yama and niyama, we've done our physical practice, we've done our breath work. Now we're moving towards our meditation. And then the ultimate achievement is the samadhi, the oneness or the bliss that can be achieved through that really deep disassociation from the world and that really, really deep meditation. So, what we hope to achieve is all of these in every class, right? And so we have our asana, we have our breath, we have our withdrawal the senses in that we just want to keep the room little bit less crazy than the street, right? We have our focus on those challenging poses. We begin and end our class with our meditation. And then, of course, what is our samadhi? Our shavasana, right? It's what you achieve at the end of your class when you create this kind of whole circle. Cool. Questions on that or comments? Chat or unmute if you like. Good. Okay. All right. So let's,
sorry,
yeah, go for it.
I have one class, just a question about the words. Is
Mhm.
ni does ni mean something in niyama that ties it to yama?
That's a good question. I'll look that up. I don't think it means not yama, but we can look it up and see if the ni, yeah, goes with something. That totally makes sense.
And then, um,
I have a feeling it might mean the restraint on yourself. I have a feeling that might mean like going back onto yourself. Yeah, go ahead, Tamika, or whoever else that was.
Yeah, so I wonder if is that why is the idea of the which one is the withdrawing of the senses
Pratyahara.
pratyahara, is that sometimes why some teachers don't like music, or why
Hmm.
some teachers, so why some classes may not have music, because they
Totally.
adhere to that.
Yeah, that's going to lead you towards the intense focus and the steady mind. I mean, some folks really think it's distracting, but there's also music that is distracting, that is more distracting, right? So the minute you're using music with words, you're running the risk that you're going to lose the people's focus and they're going to start singing along with the song or listening to the words, which it might be okay with you. You might be like, cool, I'm doing this practice. We do the same thing every week. And so I don't really need them to listen to complicated instructions, or you can just choose to go with music that doesn't have words. And Taco talks about kind of like building the perfect playlist so that it's both there with you as someone in the room, but also fades away when you need it to, so that people can, so it doesn't pull the focus from you. Yeah, good question. Okay,
I
someone else. Yes, Gianna.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Where does Tantra fit into all of this?
Tantra is a type of yoga having to do with conserving your own energy, similar to this brahmacharya, right? So let me think. Who do we have that's into Tantra? We have Ekaterina. Yeah, Thursday. If you can ever go to her class, I'm not super familiar with it personally, but she does a class 4:30 on Thursday and tell her like I want to do some tantra practices and stuff. Because it's not all like about sex. Like of course we hear that and that's like what gets famous, but it's a lot of different things is like conserving your energy, um, you know, all of that is tantra. Yeah, she's a good
Yeah,
one.
I was it's more that a lot of like what we've heard so far has been a lot about how do we get out of suffering? And
Mm,
Tantra to me is kind of how do we achieve some other things through pleasure and
hmm.
conscious pleasure? So that's just an
Yeah.
aspect that is
Have you
interesting to
studied
me.
it a lot or how do you know?
I've participated in different things. It's pretty
Hmm.
popular in Colombia, and there's like Tantra festivals, and
Yeah.
it's it's interesting. It also there's this whole idea that part of the patriarchal system we're in is trauma based and
Hmm.
demonizing pleasure.
Yes, I
Um,
believe that.
so,
Yes.
yeah.
That sounds right. It's correct. Um, that's cool. Yeah, if you want to share any of those practices, like maybe next week when I have you guys all for a longer chunk, you could share a couple tantra yoga poses with us if you want to.
Uh, I will look some up.
Yeah, exactly. We try to cover like every type of yoga in the 200-hour, but there's like so many other ones. You know, there's like Raja yoga, Inanna yoga, like there's so many different ones and um cool. Okay. So should we shift over to our reading?
Rachel, I had a quick question.
Yeah, go for it, Dan.
I've heard it said that the asana, the physical yoga, is is meant to simply allow us to like meditate longer.
Mhm.
That sounds like that's kind of reductionist in a way.
Um, it was taught to boys who were preparing to be Hindu monks, right? Who knew that they were going to be sitting for a really long time. And so basically, they were the only ones allowed to practice these postures because they were thought to be holy, you know? And they realized that it's really hard to get teenage boys to sit still. And so it prepared them, you know, all of the like external rotating hip stuff that we do prepares you for lotus. And all of the, you know, internal rotating prepares you to sit in like, say, hero's pose. So yeah, I mean, it's reductionist. I think maybe that was like really, really, really at the very beginning before it became much more popularly known in India. And you know, then there was the period of time where Indians were doing it, and then Americans were like, wow, this shit's cool. Like people brought it over, and then of course it's turned into a whole different thing. But I will say to that, I've gone to a free yoga class in India that was like my town where my family's from is not like Varanasi or like a big yoga town. It's Rajasthan. It's like a pretty like it's Hindu, but there's also Muslim, but it's not like there you don't see like white hippie people going there for yoga classes. It's not that type of town. But I did find a class and it was like at 5 in the morning and it was mostly older people. It was like the way that people do Tai Chi in the parks here, right? So it wasn't a lot of asana, it was a lot of like meditation. We did tapping, wake up the body. It was like 90 minutes and it was freezing and foggy because it was like during sunrise. We did a few sun salutations, but it was mainly like more like Ayurveda, you know, like I said, like lots and lots of different pranayama practices, lots of like seated stretching, like reaching for your feet, reaching for your feet, reaching for your feet, and then like a little bit of standing poses, but no like peak flow or anything like that. So it would be cool to do like an essay on like this is also yoga, you know, go find some wacky, you know, example of folks just living their best life and having what they have consider a yoga practice, which is like so different from what we think of it as. Does that answer your comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
But yeah, reductionist, exactly. No women, all of that. Okay. Niyama is derived, thanks, Sarah. Niyama is derived from the Sanskrit root niyam, which means to hold. Thus, niyama translates to rule, observances, or practice of self-restraint. Okay, I mean, kind of because the control is also the word yama, so I could see that that's a little bit buried in there, right? Self-restraint, control. Yeah. Okay, should we go to the reading part that we did, the manual? I'm just going to pull it up here so you don't have to worry too much about having your binder right there. And this is always a fun lecture. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm going to start on page 72 of our journal. You can have it open or not, doesn't really matter. Jason Crandall is a great local yoga teacher who leads teacher trainings. I've studied with him. Whitney studied with him. He used to run Yoga Trees 300-hour advanced training. He's really funny. He's kind of dry. And anyway, he kind of put this together, which I think was kind of funny. So we sometimes make up words. Words just come out of our mouth that we, don't realize and all that. But here's some easy ways to immediately improve your communication in class, right? So not speaking loudly enough. We started working on this together. It's the number one thing, that we see that students, if they can only hear every, 4 out of 5 words, the whole time they're just going to be struggling to hear you and to keep up. You want to have your voice fill the room in such a way that it doesn't even have to be it's just second nature. It doesn't even have to be thought about, that they can hear you. You don't want them to have to strain. And then one thing that people don't realize is that often if you're demoing or if you're doing a pose, they can't hear you, right? So you're in down dog and your face is like down here and your mouth is down here. Or maybe you're in child's pose, you're showing them like, they don't know child's pose. Let me show them child's pose. But then when you're talking, your face is like in the floor, right? And then the other thing is they might be doing something where they can't hear or see you. Also music playing too loud. So this one's important. The second one, dropping your voice off of a cliff. So, and I'll just read his. So we do something like this. Inhale, lengthen your torso forward into Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, step back into downward facing dog. Right? And I know you've all heard that. I know you've heard that. So in theater, this is a big thing too. We say that the most important word of the sentence is the last word of the sentence. So you don't want to drop your voice off the cliff. It's probably because you're running out of breath, right? But just take another breath. Inhale, lengthen your torso forward into Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, step back into downward facing dog. You want to make sure that dog is loud enough for people to hear. Upspeak is kind of when you let your voice, and I know why we do it. We do it because we don't want to be like forceful or like commanding too much. So we suggest, right? So the difference would be like between step back into downward facing dog or step back into downward facing dog, right? It doesn't have to be like a real question, but sometimes it's like a little bit of too much of a suggestion and they're not sure if they're supposed to do it or not. They're like, well, are we supposed to do that? Or like, should we maybe do something else? Again, you don't want them to have to go into their thinking mind. They should just be able to react to what you're saying and completely zone out. You know what I'm talking about, right? 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 So it's kind of common that people sometimes do that. And then this is the biggest one. I want to like circle this with red pen. I do it, you do it. We all add filler words, right? So it's like, yes, good, not good if you're actually like telling a student specifically that they're doing something properly or good, that's different. But if you just find a lot of like, the number one is we're gonna, or now we're gonna. Now we're gonna do this. Now we're gonna do that. Now we're gonna do this. And now we're gonna do that. It's like, you don't need any of that. So I might get kind of hard on you towards the end of the training and just cut everything except for the really important cues that we need. That doesn't mean you can't say alignment cues. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use coupling cues. Alignment cues have good, they just have they have good meat on their bones. There's value to them. But often we just babble because we don't know how to be quiet for a minute. My favorite thing is instead of filler words and phrases, just breathe with your students a few times. Just inhale and exhale. It'll remind them to breathe. And you can take a pause so that you don't have to have your voice, talking the whole time. Okay, this next one is a little bit subtle. So inging your students to death. Inhaling, stretching your arms overhead. Exhaling, forward bending. Inhaling, lifting halfway up. Exhaling, stepping back to downward facing dog. This tends to happen at the end of class when you're more suggesting and like being a gentle voice. Laying down, lifting the arms, dropping the knees to one side, opening the left arm, take a twist, taking a twist, rising into this. So a little bit is okay, but again, just inhale, do this, exhale, do that. Try to cut out the INGs. Yeah, he says, don't be afraid to come to a conclusion and add a period. It doesn't have to just be this long run-on sentence all the time. And then crowding your students' ears is just, I'm totally guilty of this one. It's issuing too many alignment cues sometimes because you're moving quickly in a flow and you just really want to let them know what they're going to, right? So something like inhale, reach the arms up, exhale, forward fold, extend the right arm behind you into twisted triangle, take a twist to the right and turn your gaze to the right thumb. Like something like that, where it's just like too much, you're like, pick two of those things. That was like 7. New teachers don't do that as much because they're more trying to fill the little bit of time that they have with words. It's more like teachers who have been teaching a long time who really want to convey all that information, but also want to teach a more fast-paced class. That tends to happen. Okay, so then we have passive voice. Again, this is a little more subtle. So passive voice is a little bit like filler words. So the phrases, the action of the iliotibial band is to assist in knee extension and provide some external rotation force. So first of all, that's a doozy of a cue. He says, notice the phrases, the action of the, and is to assist. It doesn't matter. Just say the iliotibial band extends the knee. The iliotibial band provides external rotation force. That's keeping the meat of the cue without extra, passive words. Yeah. So you have this in your binder to refer back to, and there's a lot more, of course. And then he gives a nice little list of action words: activate, balance, broaden. I won't read them all, but as we start making up our little sequences, this will be a good tool to have to go back and create some cues. And then some examples: press through the ball of feet, press inner feet into mat, relax head, relax hip. Now, I don't like tuck tailbone. I feel like it causes people to grip too much in their glutes and to create like a really, like just the tuck is not great on the body. So I like to use the word lengthen the tailbone, lengthen this, lengthen that. But we love engage, right? We love engage. We love engage core. We love engage thighs. People can really connect with that word engage. They know it means like turn on that muscle. So engage is a really good one. Lengthen, he's got pull. Okay, and then the don't say. Kinda, which should, try. Sometimes I like try. Try is like, I know why he's saying don't, because it's like either do it or don't. There is no try. But sometimes you can say, try rotating a little bit more and see how this feels. Try extending the arm, and if that bothers the shoulder, don't bring it down. So I guess I would say try works if you have a little bit more to it than that, Try this, but also this is okay. You wanna, like, we're gonna, you're gonna. Drop head, I don't know where that came from. That's not like a filler word. Remember to, again, it's up to you. If you're doing a flow and you're just doing the flow again quicker, you can maybe say, remember we did this the first time. It's sit bones, not sits bones or seat bones. And then maybe, yeah, so it's personal. I like to say maybe sometimes, again, when you're working with a group that's like up leveling and down leveling, maybe come into a full handstand if that seems comfortable. Maybe if it's time if you want to lift your leg up. Okay, and then the don't do gestures. This is a big one, and it's hard because it's hard to know what to do with your hands. right? You're walking around, you're essentially delivering a 1 hour long monologue or 75-minute long monologue. And so like, yeah, we're doing some of it. We're like marking some of it, lift, lower, sure. But the rest of the time, what do you do with your hands? So we don't want you to put your hands on your hips because that's very drill sergeant-y. We don't really very much want you to cross your arms because that's also closes off the body and energetically it's just kind of, oh, right? We don't want you to play with your hair, touch your face, look at the ceiling, pick your nose or your underwear out of your ass or lean on the wall, right? One thing that is really hard to do is just to let your arms rest on your sides. It's like it's really advanced asana to just walk around letting your arms be natural. We're very self-conscious of our hands, like very much like, oh, what are they doing? So I invite you to just practice, not doing the whole class, but using the hands to do, use them to do it to help get your point across. You can do a little bit of the extension with them, but you're not crossing your hands leaning on the wall. I will say that when I was pregnant, there was both times, but specifically the first time, there was I'm going to have a hard time. Yes, you are. And that is going to be your work. That is going to be your work, Spinderella, right? Because it's like they're there. You can hold a prop. That's a good trick. Yeah. You can walk around with like a strap or, some kind of prop. But I will say that when I was pregnant with my first one, I was teaching up until the very end and I got so hot and I just couldn't breathe very much. So I was just like, you can't see, but there was a stack of blocks that was about, I'm sorry, a stack of blankets that was 3 feet high in our old uptown studio in the corner. We just stacked them on the floor. That was where they went. And I just squatted on that thing and taught the whole class. And they're like, oh, she's in her place. I'm like, hey, today we're going to do this. So there's times when, yeah, you need to like lean or you're tired or you have to sitting is fine, of course. We're not saying don't sit. It's just like the leaning and that kind of stuff. The leaning is because it makes you look disinterested or just tired, not really into it. Inside Out too. Yeah. I just rewatched that with my kids and cried just as many times the second time. What do I do with my arms? Nice. Okay. Questions on that page 70, what is it? 72 to 78?
Jabari had a question in
Oh,
chat.
go ahead. Yes. Okay. Let me see. Sorry if I scrolled past that. Is gesticulation. Yeah, no, gesticulation is okay, I think. You mean just moving your hands like this when you're talking?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a hand talker, and
Yeah, be a
it
hand talker.
doesn't
I
distract
I am
from.
too. I've never been distracted by that because it I don't think it's too aggressive. You're getting your point across, you know. You're getting your point across. We'll look at it in class, but I think if that helps you get your point across rather than just like, I have to keep my arms at my sides, then that's a good thing. You do you, boo-boo, right? And also don't stress too much about this, like Rachel said I can't do that. It's just in general, like sure, every once in a while your hands might end up there. Great. But don't walk around teaching the whole class that way. That's going to give you that very closed off look, you know? So this is just another article, pretty similar ideas. Leave out the unnecessary words, edit yourself, get to the nuggets, get to the core. Definitely let some silence come into the practice. Make sure you project your voice. And yeah, it's interesting and I wouldn't say you have to pull it out of the source, but every time you're in a class and a teacher uses a cue that you like, just file it away. It'll just file it away in there. You could jot it down, sure, but there's really interesting words that I've heard that I'm like, totally taking that, you know? Okay, and then this next article shifts to what to do to prepare, particularly with beginning students, but really everyone. So this goes for everyone, right? Get to class early. People pick up on the energy if you're running in late, couldn't find a parking space, et cetera, et cetera. Do the prop grabbing first, right? So you're probably used to that by now, but it's really hard to stop class, get the prop, blah, blah, blah. So just as you're setting up, just have, oh, come on in, grab 2 blocks. help the new students find their way, acknowledge them. It's hard to describe how important it can be to learn people's names. And of course, we have, a class of 25 people. Half of them are new. You're not going to like learn everybody's name that first day. But I signed up for my teacher training at Laughing Lotus because the teacher remembered my name after just one class. And I went back a couple weeks later and he was like, "Oh, hey, Rachel, how are you doing?" And I was like, "You are the bomb." And then I ended up like signing up for his teacher training that day. So people aren't used to having their names remembered in this world, right? It's not common. So if you can, try to use like a mnemonic device, maybe, I don't know, their first letter of their first name reminds you of a word and then you just associate it with them. I've also heard, and I've tried this before too, if you say the name back to them, it helps put it in your brain. So I would say, "Hey, what's your name?" And Dan would say, "I'm Dan." I'm like, "Hi, Dan, I'm Rachel." And I could even say it again, like, "Nice to meet you, Dan." So, 2 or 3 times. And then, of course, that's only usually going to work if you're not also like multitasking with 10 other things. So, we try our best. Um, and then acknowledge them. Yeah, use the presence of beginner to review the basics. Once you start the class, stay present, speak to what is happening right in front of you, not to the routine in your head. So this also goes for everybody. It's so easy to just say, we're going into sun B because that's what's in my head. And you're like, wow, they are like really flailing with sun A, to stop and say, okay, we're going to do sun A again. I'm going to teach you guys chaturanga. I'm going to teach you cat cow. I'm going to teach you a solid down dog with good alignment. So you always have to be able to kind of like change course on a dime. Work with them through the suns and vinyasa. Resist the urge to be the rescuer, right? So you can't be everything to everybody, but if you see that, almost everybody is doing something that's not good alignment or just like unsafe in their body, it's okay to say that and to also keep saying it a couple more times. What's hard is to try to go around and fix everyone's foot. Even if you only have like 6 people, you're not going to like get to the foot for everybody. Remind them about modifications. People are very nervous about modifying. Like the number one reason people don't come to the studio is because they tell me they're not flexible enough and they're not good enough at yoga to come to a yoga studio. So we have to kind of 86 that idea that you have to already have a strong practice to even go to a studio. So just keep reminding them to modify, keep reminding them for child's pose. One time isn't enough. You have to keep saying it, right? If someone leaves, keep your eye on them, but resist the urge to chase them. Rarely do people like leave in the middle of class, but yeah, don't run after them if they leave. They might just have some issue going on. And then leave time for rest. So most new teachers tend to go way too short or way too long, right? Either it's like over and they're like, "Oh my God, I just did my whole sequence. We still have 20 minutes." Or more common is they go too long. So that's why we get really on you guys for the final exam. We'll have like a timer that goes off. But yeah, it's really hard to remember to leave enough time for Shavasana, especially if maybe maybe it's a kind of class where people can ask questions or whatever. Make sure you give that time, that bookend of time between the class and going out into the wide world. And then yeah, just invite them back, let them know they're welcome, even if they like couldn't do it. And then we're going to go to this next time, so don't worry about that. And I think, yeah, this is when we're going to start our sequencing. Okay. Questions on those couple of articles? I have one more. It's back at the beginning.
I have a question about the timing piece.
Yeah, go for it.
So as you're adjusting to meet your students' needs, how do you adjust your time in such a way that you're still filling out a full class?
So if you have fewer people show up than you think, or what?
No, like if you decide that, okay, I need to go back and do Sun A's a few more times.
Yeah. You just have to take something else out later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have a class that's like maybe in your mind a little bit too short because you know, especially with beginners, that you'll go back and work on some stuff. And then there's always, it is a beautiful thing when a teacher says, we're going to take these last 2 minutes of class for people to explore any poses that they want, and then we're going to take Shavasana. I've never heard a student like not like that, you know. In fact, I often think that sometimes the classes are too controlled or too led. Let people take a sun salutation by themselves. Let them feel their breath. They really don't need to listen to our voice the entire time. They have their body awareness, right? Yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah.
have a question really quick.
Hi. How you doing?
Oh my God, I just realized my name is my mom's name.
That's okay. Hi, Brittany. How's it going, Britt?
Hi. But I know we're probably gonna go into this more, but sometimes I have a hard time with memorizing things
Mm-hmm.
and like memorizing like long phrases or I guess
Yeah.
I don't know if you call phrases in
Yeah. We call them vignettes.
vignettes.
So vignettes would be the sections of the class.
Mhm.
I stole that from my friend Pete Guinoso. I don't know who he stole that name from. I'm sure he stole it from somebody. So it's like vignettes and vinyasas.
Okay.
So the vignette might be that you go from warrior one to warrior two to triangle to side angle.
Right.
That's the vignette on each side. In between the vignettes are vinyasas, right? And that's that sequence of movement where you bring the hands down, lift up, blah, blah, blah. So I like to think of it as you learn, let's say, 10 of those, and then you just kind of move them around in your brain.
I like that.
Right. And then you just kind of accumulate more over time, and then you can like sprinkle those in. So I have some vignettes that are core strengthening, and I'll just put that section in. Like if I know we're doing an arm balance, I'll put the core strengthening in before the arm balance because we need to have a strong core. If we're not doing an arm balance, I'm like, I always want to do core if it's a power class, but I'll do it later. So we can like check it off the list, but we didn't necessarily need it for the peak pose. So I think you can get far with those vignettes or those chunks or those sections, and you can, that's what we're going to keep working on the Thursdays is like giving you a toolbox of like enough of those, even if they're literally as simple as what I just said, like warrior one, warrior two, triangle pose, side angle. That could be one that you teach because you're teaching it on both sides.
And I like that those are kind of like you remember those, but you can also do like variations of those. So you could do like
Exactly.
Adding on.
You could be like, for example, our peak pose is going to be eagle, which is a wrapped arm, wrapped leg pose. So one thing I do a lot is I warm up the arms by doing warrior one at the beginning with eagle arms. And maybe we do like inhale, exhale. A little bit. They're stretching the shoulders. And then when eagle shows up, they're not like, oh, that's like uncomfortable. I didn't know where that came out of left field. You can even put that in the vinyasa. At the beginning of each sun salutation, you can do eagle arms, unwrap, eagle arms the other way, unwrap, forward fold, vinyasa.
Okay, I like that too.
Yeah. So once you get the theme that you want, you can like sprinkle that in through your vignettes. And then the vignettes can stay the same. You're like, every class, I'm going to do warrior one, warrior two, triangle, and side angle. But this one, I'm going to do arms behind the back. That next one, I'm going to, add a balancing pose. Then that one I'm going to teach on Thursday, we're going to start from tree and we're going to step back into warrior one. So it's different. So don't get me wrong, there's a million yoga poses, but like we don't do that many different ones in class, if you think about it. Right. And that's one of those. Do you have those cards? Order those cards. Yeah. Those are good for putting them out in a list and laying them next to each other and sequencing poses. Yeah. Yeah. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the sequencing, say inhale and the action, say exhale and the action. And then this is just talking about a demo. I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this because we will be demoing a pose in probably about a month. So you stop the people for your demo. This isn't going on while they're doing practice. Like this is literally like, everybody come sit down, watch me now, you know? So you come into the pose, you say it, you explain it, you describe what you're doing in short directive poses. So for example, if you're demoing crow, you might say, here's the props you can use for crow. Some people like to perch on a block. Some people like to use a strap on their hands. Some people like to do it against the wall and put their head on the wall. Then you just step by step talk through it. And then almost as important as how to come in, tell them how to come out. Because otherwise they're just going to be hanging out in crow like, okay, how do I get out of this? Let's see, and then there's different ways you can do it. You can say, okay, you do it while I'm continuing to do it. That's one way. Or you can say, okay, I'm done with my demo. Now everybody do it. I'm going to walk around, right? Or you could say, put that in your head. We're going to do that in this flow in like 2 minutes. So just as long as you give them time to see it, how to come in, how to come out, and what props to use, then you've kind of, you showed your demo. Let's see, 2 to 3 cues going in. Make sure your demo is true to what you're teaching. Yeah, make sure you're doing the pose with correct alignment, which actually brings me to my next point, which is you can do a demo of a pose you don't necessarily know how to do, or like you know how to do it, but your body can't do it. For example, full splits, right? So I demo full splits, but I demo it with a block because I can't extend my front leg straight. So I'll say, if you have a straight leg in full splits, great. If not, here's an example of, a block under your leg. You can also, this is generally not like at the very, very beginning when you're new, but if there's a student that has a really beautiful, well-aligned expression of that pose, you can be like, look at her. She comes every week and she has this amazing, aligned mermaid pose because she's got this open shoulder, which my shoulder's not feeling great together, whatever. You can usually, call on a student and they'll demo it. Not all the time, but like if you know them, they're usually happy to if they enjoy that pose. So that's a way you can demo with someone else instead of yourself. Yeah, you can use your assistant and student to demo the pose for you. I don't understand refrain from using pronouns and sides. I don't understand what that means. But also mirroring, we'll talk way more about mirroring, but if you can mirror it back to them, that's nice. We have mirrors. You can also do it into the mirrors. Most studios don't, so it's better because otherwise, if you think about it, your back is going to them, right? So it's better to mirror it. Here are some poses that we do not demo during class, or there are some poses. Your body's not warm enough, right? That makes sense. You have an injury or you can't do it, so you use someone else who can do the pose. And I'll add to that, if you can do it with props or a variation of it with props, do that with the props. Yeah, that's the demoing section. Cool. Questions on that? I can't see you all, so just unmute yourself because I can't see if you're raising your hand on my Zoom.
When you say something like, okay, we're going to have 10 breaths to explore this pose. How are you counting? Are you counting your breaths? Like it just sounds like so much to do, watching the students and count the breaths.
Totally. You can not count them and just tell them to stop when you think 10 breaths have passed. You can say, you can breathe and count them in your head. You can listen to their breath and count it. I sometimes it's because I used to teach dance, but I sometimes just also count like beats, like 3, 2, you come to my class, hold it for 3, 2, 1. They're not exactly breaths, but sometimes they're just beats,
Right.
Yeah, any one of those is right. The only thing that would not be right is like, and this has happened before, we're going to hold this for 10 breaths. Okay, come out, right? Then clearly it wasn't 10 breaths, But if it's a nice time, or you don't have to say how many breaths, you can just say, we're going to hold this for a bit, we're going to hold this. Sometimes it's nicer to just look around and say, we're going to hold this for a bit while everyone explores the pose. And you just watch and you can like tell, okay, after 5 breaths, they're over it, they're moving on, and then you can shift them. A lot of it is about watching the class and not necessarily thinking like, well, we're supposed to do this pose for 10 breaths, so let's make sure it's 10 breaths or 8 breaths or whatever. Yeah. And again, that'll fluctuate with like a beginner group. They're not going to be able to hold it as long, or advanced group. Maybe you can challenge them, really try to get them to. And there's nothing wrong with trying to get people, this is the tapas, back to that niyama. There's nothing wrong with trying to get people to work harder and to take themselves further. You just have to do it in a way that's not like no pain, no gain, right? If we're in dancer's pose, I will often say for the last breath, before you want to come out, take one more breath and deepen the pose one last breath and then come out. Or when you think you want to come out of the pose, take it for one more breath or two more breaths. And that just gives people a little chance to grow. And obviously if it's hurting them, they're going to come out. But if they're just getting tired, then you kind of challenge them to go further. Cool. Other questions? Don't worry about this part, the languaging. We'll do that later. Yay. Okay. So I'm going to close the share and I want to chat a little bit about Angela asked me to give you guys some notes, both about your own like checking in when you check in for class and also for the folks that are doing the desk checking in. She said there's a couple like really common things she just wanted me to, let's see. She says regular link. Oh, she says I can hop on Zoom at 5. It's okay. I'm just going to do it. She said she can come on at 7:45. I think we'll be done by then. We'll be done in a few. We will be done by then. It's all good. Okay, so here are the things. When you're checking someone in at the desk, she wants everyone to make sure that there's a green dollar sign, which will indicate that they've paid. If there's a black dollar sign, you need to click that black dollar sign and then assign a payment to it, whether it's a credit card. Rarely do they have cash, but we do accept Venmo. So there's a Venmo scan thing at both desks. Then you can just ring it up as cash. So I guess there's just a lot of people who haven't paid that are going into class. Every student needs to be registered for class if they attend. If there's a wait list, then we wait 5 minutes before releasing those spots onto the people in the wait list. So in other words, the people have a 5-minute grace period who signed up for the class, and then we'll take them out and put in the wait list. For ClassPass, the company ClassPass, not if they have like a class card, but the company like capital C, capital P. Does everyone know what that is? Raise your hand if you don't know, because I'll explain it. Okay, so everyone knows. So we can't register them. They have to register through their app. So a lot of times they'll go, I'm on ClassPass, put me in, I'm late, of course. But we can't. And the reason that they can't register on ClassPass is because they actually try to register after the class had started. So that's their deal with ClassPass. They can buy a drop-in. I mean, we're happy to have them buy a drop-in through us. Okay, another one is the new student special is an auto-renewing membership if they don't cancel it after the first month. So we remind them that it's going to renew, but then it's kind of like all that stuff you sign up for on the App Store. It does auto-renew. And then Senia says, just send me a message if they have an issue with something, either via Slack or info@leftcoastpoweryoga.com. She might not, if it's the evening, she might not deal with it till tomorrow, but she's online all the time. I think I just got through it all, Angela. And look, you're on the beach.
Always, yep.
I did have one question about,
yes, please.
Rachel, you said everyone should be registered. What if teachers' guests come? Because I've had a couple of times when someone's like, I'm a guest of this teacher, and I was like, do I register you or do I not? And the teacher said, don't register them. So
yeah, she's right. Don't register their wife or their boyfriend or whoever, because we actually don't register people who have not paid because it messes up our accounting. So like you guys are supposed to register because you've paid, you have a package, like that helps with our accounting. if the teachers and the other work trade staff who are technically not paying for their membership, we don't want them in the system.
Okay.
I know that's a little confusing, so sorry. But yeah, if they're just like, whatever, someone's
I'm this
husband,
person's guest, then
Yeah.
they just, okay.
yeah, confirm with the
If- yeah.
teacher. Not that we have a whole lot of people like lying about that. I've never seen you before. Who are you? I'm your guest. But
It'd be a little different if they're a member's guest. And I think we went over that, Tamika. I know I went over that with everybody that I trained
will you
about guest
share that? Will you
passes.
share that with them real quick?
So every member gets their guest pass, one guest pass a month. They're technically supposed to set that up with us ahead of time by emailing the info at Left Coast. And that's so that we can set their profile up in Fit Degree. And we can track whether people have used the guest pass, right? So it should be all set up when they come in. They should be registered in the class, show is paid, everything like that. Obviously, that doesn't always happen. People come in and they say, I'm bringing a guest. This is my sister from out of town or whatever. And I don't ever turn them away because they're already there, but I remind them of the policy. But then you have to go through the process of creating a new user.
And
Does
that's so
everybody
that
feel
we can have them
comfortable
sign
with that?
the waiver. Yeah. You can do it verbally. That's what I do often. I'll just say, what's your name? What's your email?
Yeah.
What's your
All you
phone
need is name
number?
and email,
Yeah.
really, to
And
get
then-
it started.
And then when you register them in the class, it should have them sign the waiver on the iPad. And just so everyone knows, we are changing systems in like 3 weeks. So a lot
That's
of the
true. So I
well, a
guess
lot of-
everything that I
no,
would pull
it's
up and
not.
show them
It's
now
going to
would
make
be.
more sense. It's going to be a lot more streamlined. So if you can handle this clunky system, like the new one's going to be super simple. So, but yeah, that's the process. We try to not have anyone in who hasn't like signed the waiver and stuff like that.
Does everybody feel comfortable taking payments, like knowing where to find the different things on Fit Degree? Like under
Purchase.
the CP and the member, the M.
Jabari saying yes, because he's done trade for like 3 years now. Does everyone who's been doing this for only 2 weeks or less?
I think from my side, like somebody came in, they wanted to buy a pass. And so we did the like first month free.
Yeah.
But they were asking me about the different options, like the other membership passes. And there wasn't a printout that I could see. So
Yeah.
I went onto my account and was kind of scrolling and telling them about it. But
It's
just
all
having
on the black board, the black poster board,
and
right? So at Laurel, it's right behind you at the desk, and then at Grand, it's on the bottom of the desk. Like, just tell them
Okay.
to look down. That has all of our packages and pricing.
Okay,
It's
thanks.
under the actual physical desk thing.
Got
We
it.
used to have it up high, but then we like got our cool LED sign and we put it down low. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
I had someone who said they were taking the class through Kaiser, that Kaiser had
Oh
some
yeah, I still don't
program.
understand how that.
Yeah. So because now we're doing more insurance programs and more like health savings account, flexible spending, that kind of stuff.
But I think he's talking about the active fit thing.
The Renew, well, there was
Renew
Renew
active fit.
was United. Yeah, I don't. So basically, those things they've got to be set up through their insurance.
So was she in the system at all, or she just walked in and said, I want to take class and I'm going through Kaiser? That's probably what happened, right?
I think since this is the first time I'm talking about it,
Yeah.
it was fine. She was already registered, or I set her up.
Oh.
with a
Oh,
degree.
okay, good.
That's great. Yeah.
And
What's
so
supposed to happen?
Those should show up as an M or a CP.
Those people
Yeah,
are supposed to pop up in our system, but they don't do the legwork in the back end sometimes, and they just walk in and say, I'm with Kaiser, get me in the class. And then we generally just escalate it to Senia. Like me personally, I let them take the class and I just send Senia a note
info.
and get their phone number or their email. And I'm like, we'll just follow up with you because they're also always late, stressed, haven't found the studio. So I usually just say, we're going to follow up with you later. 9 times out of 10, or more than that, they're going to pay for the class somehow. They're not trying to like get the free class. So yeah. It's the 1 minute rule. Anything administrative wise that takes more than like 1 minute of our time, we usually offload for later for someone else to do when there's not 5 other people trying to get into the class. If it's just a quick thing, like sure.
Yeah. So anybody who comes and they're on like some sort of insurance or flexible spending, it's going to show, it should show up paid. So even if they come in and they're like, I'm here from Kaiser or something, just be like,
Great, check in
check
like
that their
everyone
name's
else.
there. Okay.
Yeah, usually. Cool.
Yeah, just make sure that no one's left with the black dollar sign.
I told them about the black dollar sign.
The dollar sign is about it. You know, if they're new and they have the star, have them sign the waiver, which will just pop up when they sign themselves in on the iPad.
Mm-hmm. And then our new system won't have that extra step. You'll turn it towards them and they'll boop right there. So that'll be easier. Cool. All right. What do you think, Angela? Are they looking faded now? Should we let them go? Are they glazed?
Well, and since, you know, and it sounds like in 3 weeks we'll just have to train everyone on a new system anyway.
We
So
will, but like I said, you know the groundwork
be
now, so
easier.
there'll be little different things, but mainly it's the same thing. But thank you guys for doing this, and we really love having you in the studio. We really appreciate it. Isn't it cool to get to kind of see the students and see all the angst that comes in, and then see them walk out an hour later with like happy and relaxed faces, and you're like, it's all worthwhile dealing with all this admin shit. No, I'm just kidding. All right, have a good night. I'll stay on for a few minutes if anyone has private questions. Otherwise, I'll see you next Thursday. We'll be in person at Grand B. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.